All right. Welcome to our discussion on stress and health. Now, you might be wondering what we're doing talking about stress and health, how those are um, part of a psych class. But you'll come to see soon, they're very much involved in the way that we think, right? That the way that we think has a big impact on our overall physical health. And it's pretty interesting the different ways that happens. So let's get right into it. First, let's talk about what stress is. The way that we can define stress is it's the negative feeling that you have when you feel like you're not able to cope with the demands of a situation. So it's a negative feeling that you have when you're not able to cope with the demands of a particular situation. You feel stressed. So now the next question is, where does stress come from? And lots of different sources of stress. So one category, you might say, an obvious source would be sort of catastrophes, major things that would stress out anyone, like war or some sort of natural disaster. But those are fairly obvious and they don't happen very often. So we need something, if we're going to try to under stress, we need something that is a little bit more, happens more daily, on a daily basis maybe, or certainly a lot more frequently. And we can then turn into major life events. Things like getting married, graduating, getting a job, losing a job, that sort of thing. That's what we're talking about with life events. And Holmes and Ray in the late 60s tried to quantify the stress that people would feel in response to certain life events. Like how much stress would an individual feel when they get a speeding ticket, let's say. And so what they did with this, what they call a social readjustment rating scale, is that they gave out questionnaires to a lot of people and asked them to rank like from like the worst, the thing that would be the most stressful in their life, to the second most stressful, third most, and so on. Then what they did was they created a master list of all the questionnaires, and they picked the ones that most people listed as the most stressful, and they put that as the number one. And then the one that got the second highest amount of votes got number two. And then, and so on, all the way down. And then what they did was they assigned like a stress unit, like just a number that would correspond to each event. And then that's the questionnaire. And so it looks kind of like this. You won't be able to read this, I'm pretty sure. I mean, the print is pretty small, but maybe you can. And what you can see is on the right are the life change units, the stress units. And the thinking is, if you give this to someone, you just say, and you just present it to them and say, circle all the things that have happened to you in the last year. And then they go down a circle. And then you add up all the corresponding life points, life change points. And the idea is that number is the number that we can use to understand how much stress they're under and compare people. So if someone had a score of, let's say, 200, we'd know that they had much more stress than someone who only had a score of like 75. That's the idea behind this questionnaire. And before we get into some of the assumptions behind the questionnaire, I want to just mention a couple of things. One is that these numbers you're seeing, like, say, for example, mortgage over $10,000, these numbers are corresponding to 1967 figures. And the other thing is, if you look closely at the list, There are positive um, changes, like getting a promotion at work, and there are negative life events, like uh, getting fired, getting arrested, um, trouble with your in-laws, that sort of thing. Now, here are the couple of the. I wonder if I have this up here. Yeah, I don't have it yet. There are two assumptions that underlie this questionnaire. The first one is that everyone responds the same way to a given stressor. The second one, okay, so that's one. And then the second one is that all change has a negative impact on our body, our physical body. So any of these changes, right, any and all changes, these life changes, has a negative impact on our physical well-being. So research shows that those two assumptions are not supported by the data. And so let's take the first one, the idea that everybody reacts the same way to a given stressor. That's just not true. You can, show a painting, for example, to 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different interpretations of the painting. They're seeing the same thing, but it's having a different impact on them because each person is construing or perceiving the painting in a different way. Same thing with a given stressor, like let's say getting a speeding ticket. I always use this example in lecture. Getting a speeding ticket. Some people get a speeding ticket and they react to it like, oh, it's just like the most terrible thing ever, and it ruins their whole month. Other people get a speeding ticket, on the other end, and as soon as the cop pulls away, they throw it in their back seat and they've already forgotten about it. Doesn't affect them at all. It's no big deal. And so you got this wide variety of responses in between those two poles, right? That comprise how most people respond. And the point is, though, that there's a varied way of responding to this same incident. Just depends on the person. Depends on what we say the way that they construe the event, the way they perceive it. So what psychologists and social psychologists are interested in particular is not really the nature of the stimulus in terms of how it affects us stress-wise, but it's how does the person perceive that stimulus. And then the second thing, that second assumption that all change has a negative impact physiologically, turns out that only negative stressful events have a negative physical effect. Positive stressful events, like getting a promotion, don't hurt us physically. So that's another important finding that the research indicates that does not support that assumption behind the SRRS. So we need to get more specific. When you look at the top of this picture here, and let's look at microstressors. Now, microstressor is, the way of thinking about it is it's a daily hassle, like traffic, or an annoying coworker, or if you're a non-smoker and you have to walk through a gauntlet of smokers to get into your office building because they're all standing out on the sidewalk. Things like that. Those daily hassles. Turns out that if we ask people to write down their daily hassles, those sort of daily events, that those are a good predictor, a better predictor of your physical health than if we try to understand all the major life events, because even those are not very frequent, right? So if we get more specific, like the amount of micro stressors that you're under, then those are fairly accurate predictors. Better in terms of their accuracy in predicting your physical health. Now let's get more specific and look at the relationship between stress and our body, our physical body. And way back in the 30s with Selly, he's the one, by the way, that coined the term stress and the definition that we use at the beginning of the lecture. He did some really interesting research with mice, where what he did was he had this idea that no matter what the source of the stress, it's going to have the same physical effect on the body. So he raised mice in, some mice were in like an environment where it's really hot, like a cage that's in a room that's really hot. Some mice were raised in a cage where the environment was really super, super cold. You just had the temperature turned way down. He had other mice raised in a cage that would randomly or occasionally be electrified. So on the bottom part, question then is, okay, what do you do then? Right, you raise them in these environments. They raise them in those environments for a period of time. I forget how long they raised them. Then they were sacrificed, and then they looked at their body. They did little mice autopsies. And what he found was something that confirmed his prediction, which was he thought that there's going to be no difference in the physical impact that these things have between the sources of stress. Right? So he's saying it wouldn't matter the source of the stress, you're still going to have the same kind of physical effects of the stress. And that's exactly what he found, that no matter what the stressor was in these mice, they all showed sort of the same symptoms of being under stress. Like they had enlarged adrenal glands, right, because their adrenaline was flowing through the body. Shrunken lymph nodes. The lymph nodes are responsible for your immune system, and those are shrunken. Those are compromised because they were under stress so long. And other markers in the body that indicated being exposed to stress and having a detrimental effect on the body. From this research, Selly created what he calls a general adaptation syndrome, which looks like this. The general adaptation syndrome is a sort of a picture of not only how animals would react, but humans too, once they're hit with a stressor. So you got these three phases: alarm, resistance, exhaustion. And then the white line in the middle of the horizontal line is your normal resistance to stress, your physical resistance. And then the y-axis is resistance to stress. So you can see that first phase, an alarm, your body's caught off guard, and you're temporarily compromised in your ability to fend off the physical effects of stress. But then your body goes into kind of overdrive, and even before it gets out of the alarm phase, right, you can see that it's enhanced its ability to fend off stress. And in the resistance, you've got a super ability to fend off the influence of stress on your body. And then you come to, if you don't do anything about the stressor, the thing that's stressing you out, and you remain under that stress for a period of time, then what happens is your body starts to get exhausted. Your body's like, I can't do this forever. I'm getting tired at having this maximum level of, vigilance. And so your body gets exhausted, and then it kind of, gets weak, shall we say, goes down past your normal level of stress resistance and goes down into the negative territory. And that is where people get sick. Down there, once it goes below that white line. And so that's, again, a nice example of, or sort of illustration of this chart and what happens, according to Selly. General adaptation syndrome. So again, and just to finish up a couple of points, he's saying that if you don't do anything to get rid of the stress, your body can't hold out forever, and it starts to get compromised. The immune system gets compromised, and that's when germs and other things start to flood into your system, and that's where people get sick. So, for example, a prolonged period of stress for most students, college students in high school and so on, but would say is there's two of them generally in each quarter or semester: midterms and finals. And what always happens in colleges and universities is that the student health center on campus is inundated with people with who are sick around midterms and finals, right? And this is one simple reason why that might be. Now let's look a little bit more at the relationship between coronary heart disease, and that's one type of physical indicator of a relationship between that and stress. Friedman did a really interesting study in the 50s where he he interviewed like a couple thousand men and interviewed them, and from that he broke them into kind of two. He separated them into two groups based on these men's responses, and he called these groups a Type A personality and a Type B personality. And Type A's were here are some examples of Type A. You don't have to necessarily write this down, but maybe jot a couple notes about what Type A's are. Type A people are quick to anger. They get angry really fast. They have a short temper. They're the list makers, right? They're the multitaskers. They're the workaholics. Type A people they want to win at all costs. Type A people are the ones who can't stand to wait. They can't stand people who are not on time. Type A people speed up at yellow traffic lights. But I think if you had to boil it down to a couple things, Type A people, again, they're quick to anger, and they want to win at all costs. They're the ones that they're very competitive. Now, Type B people are kind of the opposite. Type B people, they're laid back, go with the flow kind of people. They're not making lists and plans and things like that. They're just kind of going along, real easy going, right, as you can imagine. And you don't really get too freaked out or stressed out. Now, what he also found, as you can see on the top of this slide, in a study with 300 healthy middle-aged men, 269 had a heart attack over 9 years. And then from these men, 69% were Type A. So there is a strong relationship or correlation between Type A personality and heart attacks. Type A personality and heart attacks. One reason why that might be, if you're wondering, where'd that come from, is that research shows that when you're stressed, one of the things physically that happens is remember we mentioned the adrenal glands? Your adrenal glands get swollen, and what happens is you produce more adrenaline flowing through your body. This is that whole thing, like when people, like a parent sees their child under the car, somehow maybe either struck them or whatever it is. The car fell down when the teenager was cheating oil, whatever it is. And the mom or dad comes out, sees this, they're really alarmed and freaked out. Oh my God, they want to save their child. And they'll grab the car and lift it up. And it's super heavy, and people say, where'd they get that superhuman strength? It's from the adrenaline. So, but because stress is going to cause your adrenal glands to kick into overdrive, and you're going to have a lot of adrenaline flowing through your veins, and flowing through your body. And okay, so now you're saying, well, and the reason why that's not good, it's really not good, is that adrenaline acts like a catalyst to cholesterol and fatty deposits and so on that are in their blood. So what happens is it sort of speeds it up and enhances it or encourages that process, the hardening of the arteries. And that's why you probably have a strong relationship between type A and heart attacks. Again, that's not maybe the only reason, but that's one strong correlation. Another interesting study on the immune system was by Barthrop. He looked at people who are recently, and by recently I mean like within, let's say, 5 days of losing their spouse. Typically what happens, in this situation, well, and this is kind of an unusual study, so maybe I shouldn't say typically, but Barthrop, so what Barthrop did was look at obituaries and find surviving spouse that way, and these would be people then who lost their spouse between, like, say, 1 and 4 days prior, and they Martha would walk up to them and tell them what this kind of study he's doing, and then ask if they'd be willing to help. And so he got some preliminary data from them, but also he drew their blood. They of course got consent and drew their blood and compared their blood to, say, just people just sort of a normal sample. And what he found was that their blood, the blood of the surviving spouse, right, the one who had just passed away, indicated that the surviving spouse had a health system that was greatly compromised. Their grief is, overwhelming their body, so their stress level is, like I say, in the tank. It's just virtually not stress level, but their physiological immune system functioning is in the tank. It's just low, and so they're very vulnerable to disease and the stress that they're under. And this, incidentally, and Barthrop doesn't really speak to this, I don't think, in his article, but is one of the reasons that researchers sort of debunk that whole romantic notion of people who die, within a day of each other or an hour of each other. They say, oh, they were heartbroken without their spouse who, died yesterday or whatever. And they couldn't live without them and their body just gave up, how romantic, or something like that, What Barthrop's data is saying is that these older people, there are a number of pre-existing conditions and sometimes even more serious health issues and medicines and so on are just kind of keeping them afloat, just sort of keeping them going. And so when they're hit with the grief, a tremendous amount of stress, then what happens is that stress is like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and that's what causes their body to shut down. All right, now let's talk a little bit about coping with stress. Okay. Lazarus and Folkman say there's two types of ways to cope: problem focus versus emotion focus. And usually you're one or the other. Although you can flip for certain problems, certain things that come up, but usually you're one or the other. It's like a characteristic, like a personality trait. Problem focused copers, when they're hit with a stressor, they say to themselves, how do I fix this? How do I get rid of the stressor? So they confront it head on. Like, so you got a big paper due, the beginning of term, and it's announced, and it's going to come for a big chunk of your grade. And rather than wait or procrastinate, right, and kind of just continue to be stressed out. The problem focused scorer is like, I don't want to be stressed out so much. I'm going to get right into this. I'm going to start working on this and planning it and researching the paper, and like immediately, and then they won't be suffering, later on. Have a prolonged period of being under stress. The emotion-focused coper doesn't try to solve the stressor. They instead try to just live with the stressor, to manage it. Right? They try to tough it out. Of the two, of course, you might be on the same page as the field is, and understanding that for problem-focused copers that perspective is much more adaptive, because you're spending overall less time being stressed, and that's a good thing, right? Less time being stressed, and it's healthier. Just a little overhead. You don't need to really commit this to memory, or it's just kind of interesting. Hostility scores in its relationship to coronary heart incidents. In the very top end on the right, those people who had those very high hostility scores, they had a lot of heart incidents. Strong correlation supports the idea of the Friedman's research with the type A's and the type B's. Here's just another way of looking at the stress and coping. So based on each individual's personality and situational background or learning history, you see a potentially stressful event, you appraise it a certain way, right, or you construe it a certain way, and that will lead to whether or not you could cope with it. Right? And then that will in turn lead to your overall health outcome. Now, I don't know if there's too much I want to mention about this. Negative emotional stress leads to unhealthy behaviors and rise in stress hormones, compromise your immune system. Yeah, we talked about this already a little bit. Okay. Now, let's talk about a few ways that people try to reduce stress. One is by just not thinking about it, on the very top, thought suppression. That doesn't work, turns out. It works for a little while, like maybe 20 minutes, half hour, something. People can repress the stressor. But then what typically almost always happens is you get what's called suppression rebound, where the unwanted thought comes back more frequently and stronger. So that's not good. Now with relaxation, interesting study again by Friedman in 1984 this time, where they looked at people who already had a heart attack, and they come to the lab, right? So they've already had one, and they come to the lab, and we're going to assess them. But in this case, they're assigned to a couple different groups. One group for the people who are in that one particular group, they're told the standard medical advice about diet and exercise, okay? And in the other group, they're told that same advice, but they're also trained on how to meditate for a half hour every day. So they're told to meditate for a half hour every day. Then what they did was they tracked them over a period of years and found that in each group, when you're comparing the groups, the ones who were meditating had half as many second heart attacks than the first group, right? So the ones who were able to meditate and sort of just kind of calm down, they had half as many heart attacks than the sort of normal group. So what Friedman's saying, this is huge, in that relaxation, really that key is really key to helping people not have uh, that strong link, within themselves um, between let's see, let's go back to the Friedman. You don't want to have that strong in with the meditation group. It cuts the link between the person's stress and their physiological effects of the stress. That's kind of a better way of looking at it. Cuts the link between the stress and the physiological effects of the stress. And it's a really great way of cutting that, right? The meditation. Because what it does is it cuts out the stress. When you meditate for a half hour, and these were people that they did it for a half hour every day, they didn't feel the effects of the stress anymore. The stress did not have a way to physically affect them. So they were spending less time uh, um, uh, having that adrenaline flowing through their body and then clogging up their arteries again, like it was in the other group. Okay. And then last, aerobic exercise, lots of research. We don't really need to go into that, but that's also a great way, just like meditation, of cutting the effects of stress and sort of short-circuiting its effects on our body, right? The aerobic exercise. So as you can see, with the three, two, the relaxation, the meditation, and aerobic exercise are the best. Thought suppression, not so much. Now let's finish up talking a little bit about something called the self-healing personality, or hardiness. Now with hardiness, the research on this the idea here is that someone who has a hardy personality is able to, more than the average person, not have stress affect their body in a negative way. And this research shows that people who have this kind of this type of personality, they have these three C's here I have listed here: commitment, control, challenge. Okay, so commitment. Let's talk about that. Commitment means that you have a purpose in life. So if someone has a hardy personality, feels like they have a purpose in life. Control person feels like they can control important aspects of their life. And this goes back to an early 1950s uh, concept by Julian Roeder called the Locus of Control, Locus. Locus of control meaning internal or external. People who have an internal locus of control believe that they can direct their life. They can change their life. People who have an external locus of control believe that their life is sort of affected or directed by things outside of them, like fate, luck, maybe other people. That they're not in control. That's the external locus of control. So again, hardy personality would be someone who has that internal locus of control. They believe that they can control their life. And then last, challenge is the idea that you're open to challenge or specifically change. Hardy individuals are able to say to themselves, you know what, I can deal with change, I can roll with it, I can adapt. So they don't fear change, they welcome it. They like the challenge of change. Okay, some people hate change, but the problem is that's a problem, right? If you have that perspective, because life is about change. Change is going to happen to you whether or not you like it. It's all about how you react to it, right? That determines. That's the important thing. Now let's talk about something called Explanatory Style by Seligman. Seligman first started doing some research in what's called learned helplessness, and we'll talk about that probably in the abnormal section, abnormal psych. We'll talk about depression and so on. But that was the research back in the 60s when he did some interesting research with dogs, trained them to be helpless, and then made the analogy to humans and depression. But he then later switched and started talking about positive psychology and optimism, and he did some research on this, what he calls explanatory style. What this is it's it's a difference between optimists and pessimists in how they explain good and bad events, right? And he's saying that that difference can have a big impact on your not only your the way you think, but also how you feel and behave in your body. Um, Here is my little chart here on the um, explanatory style. So let's look at the very top row right there. So an optimist, when something good happens to an optimist, they say that, so internal means I caused it. Stable means it's going to be good for a long time. And global means things are good in all areas of my life. Now, when something bad happens to an optimist, they say to themselves, "Oh, it was externally caused. I didn't cause it. It's only going to be bad for a little while, right? Unstable, only for a little while." And specific, meaning that they're able to compartmentalize the badness, right? That only this one little area of my life is kind of crummy right now, but the rest is still great. And if you're noticing quickly that these things that crisscross diagonally, so you can, that's one thing to notice. And we'll go down to the bottom row with pessimism. Pessimism, external. So when something good happens, they say, I didn't cause it. And it's only be good for a little while. And it's only good in this one area of my life. The rest of my life is not good. It's crappy. And then pessimism in a bad event, they say that they caused the bad thing to happen. It's going to be bad for a long time, and it's bad in all areas of my life. You can see, obviously, that you would want you want to be an optimist, because that perspective, the way of construing events, good and bad, is the most adaptive and the healthiest in terms, the best for you in terms of your health. You're spending less time, under stress, and you're less likely to feel the physical effects of stress with that perspective. So, and again, that's research well supported, and it's showing the powerful effects of the way that you think, right, your optimism or pessimism, on your body. And Friedman's research nicely demonstrates that as well. All right. Now here's something, just again, I'm not going to ask you to know details of this, but this is some explanatory a little bit further, right? That on the red, if you have a positive explanatory style or an optimistic explanatory style, very little link or relationship between major and minor depression. But if you have a negative explanatory style or a pessimistic explanatory style, a fairly strong link to minor depression and a somewhat weaker but still significant link to major depression, not surprisingly. Also, interesting research on with regard to optimism and pessimism, with regard to the risk of death, and if you have a lack of optimism about life, right? So you're very pessimistic or hopeless, right? Look in that middle group there with cardiovascular. The risk of death is much higher. Same thing with cancer, right? Hopelessness. And what this research touches on is something interesting that research by a woman named Shelley Taylor found a couple decades ago, where with breast cancer survivors, or well, I shouldn't say survivors, but women who just got their diagnosis of breast cancer. And she found that they have varied types of reactions, but generally, if you look at two groups and the way they react, one group is, oh, this is it, my number's up. They sort of take a fatalistic, passive response. I'm just going to count the days until I die because there's no cure, and so on. And then compare that group with the group who get the diagnosis and they say, I'm going to fight this, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to win, this thing is not going to get me. When you compare those two groups, and so that latter group we could call the optimistic group, fighters, they have about 15%, between 15 and 20% less mortality, right? A lower mortality rate than the ones who have that fatalistic view. So all else being equal, right? That the only difference is the way that they're construing or perceiving the event, the way that they think about their disease has a huge impact on their overall physical well-being. All right, that's it for our discussion on health and stress. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.